Hello, Nova. Thank you for joining me today on my YouTube series, AstroCulture. We have a lovely list of questions for you today to talk about your career as an astrologer, and you're also a multifaceted spiritualist, so we can talk about all the facets of what you do. First, I kind of want to get into the purpose of this series. It is essentially exploring the world of astrology. So, in this series, I interview astrologers about how they use astrology and how it has affected their lives. This video series is meant to educate those inside and outside the astrological community about the variation, depth, and value of this practice instead of developing opinions through mainstream media and pop culture. We are here to ask the astrologers themselves about what they actually do in order to set the record straight about stereotypes in the community. Are skeptics justified about their criticism of this practice, or are they simply misinformed? What do astrologers really believe, and is astrology much more than we ever thought possible? We'll start with an introduction and your personal story. We will then get into the practice and technique that you use. We'll get into philosophy and ethics, community and culture, spiritual beliefs, and the future. So, first and foremost, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, thanks for having me. Hello everyone. My name is Nova of NovaLunaReadings. I go by they, them pronouns. I am a multifaceted spiritualist, as you put very well, based out of New York City. I specialize. My readings are very much a jack of all trades style, so I'm very good at a lot of different things. So within services, I have services for astrology, tarot, numerology, and then dream interpretations. So those are the four pillars, I guess, so to speak, of Nova Lunar readings. I also do some divination and mediumship work for myself. And on the more other career-oriented side, I am also what I call a somatic coach. I'm currently in the works of getting my certifications in both life coaching and somatic psychotherapy, and I have a master's in organizational psychology as well. So I really bring a psychology uh, aspect into all the different readings that I'm doing, especially with astrology. Um, so one term I discovered recently is humanistic astrology, which is taking like astrology and psychology together. So I think that's the term I'm going to use moving forward as a humanistic astrologer, but that's still being workshopped.
That's a really great explanation. You're not just an astrologer, you study a lot of like psychology and other elements of divination and spirituality. You go by Nova Luna Readings. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but did you want to get into how you chose your handle?
Yeah, for those of you that I guess when you see like the full name on the payment, Nova is part of my last name. So I've gone by Nova since middle school. It's just kind of a name that stuck, especially as I've discovered my non-binary nature and came out a few years ago. So it's just like the perfect name for it. And then there's an aspect around just like Nova Luna just felt really good, like new moon readings. Um, and when I eventually start my like somatic coaching business, then I officially launch that, it'll be new sun. So you have the sun and the moon kind of together. So it creates a really cool duality there that I really love. Um, and I also am very devoted to the moon in my work, Moon and Venus, especially. I work a lot with Artemis and Venus as two of my deities. So it fits that aspect of the readings that I do very well.
And also in your birth chart, you have a new moon,
That
don't
is
you?
also true. I
And
always
not only
forget, you know,
that,
it's
you
funny, I
have,
always forget that I'm like born on a new moon until someone brings it up. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. So that also just fits so well.
yeah,
With everything
and
else.
you have your moon conjoined to Neptune, which is very fitting for a spiritualist and someone who's very much into all things Neptunian. So love that.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I live on my Neptune MC line as well. I think,
really,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Wow, love that. So, how did you first get into astrology?
Yeah, so around the time of the pandemic, a little bit before, a little bit after, I did a lot of like community management, both virtually and in person. And for the community that I was working for at the time in 2019, um, there was a big like spirituality was like a side focus within there. It was really the community was really focused on like social experiments, spontaneous travel, the phrase seek discomfort is what is like the main slogan of that group. It's a group called Yes Theory. You can see them on YouTube. They do a lot more like travel versus like now versus like social experiments back in the day. There was a little mini astrology tag within like the Discord group. And people like post stuff from CoStar and just like that was kind of like my first little introduction to astrology. And then I started looking deeper and I was like, oh, this kind of resonates. And I started realizing like the parallels between psychology and astrology a little bit. And so bit by bit, I started doing readings just like casually. I actually was doing dream interpretation readings for many years prior. I started those all the way back in 2016, um, way before 2019 when I discovered astrology. Astrology is actually, of those four, is actually the last one of the four because I discovered numerology and Oracle. I did Oracle cards first. I did that in 2018, then astrology in 2019. So it's funny how astrology is the last of those yet. It's the one I'm probably most involved with now. Um, and as I was just looking more and more, I started realizing, oh, I'm actually pretty good at these readings. And then in 2020, there was the Jupiter Saturn great conjunction in Aquarius at 0 degrees, where my MC is, and I had like the biggest spiritual awakening I could ever imagine. I met my twin flame a couple weeks later, who's now one of my best friends in the entire world. And it was that connection with her that really pushed me to study astrology deep, like really, really deep. And so Nova Luna ended up being founded in not May, April of 2021. And the rest is history.
Did you have a moment where when it, like, you went from a skeptic to like, now this is undeniable?
I mean, it's it's hard to pick one moment. I remember during that 2020, I was doing the astrology of a good friend of mine who is born only a couple weeks after me, and I think seeing like his chart and him giving like really really good feedback, like that it resonated for him, was like, okay, maybe there is something here. Um, and again, I think really though, like the synastry with my twin was huge. I think that for me was like the game changer because I saw how each aspect of those things resonate. Like I could look in AstroSeek and see like, oh, this transit correlates to this aspect of our connection. It was just like, whoa, okay, there's something really, really powerful here. Um, so I think there wasn't really just like one particular moment, but just like a series of moments as I went deeper and deeper. Um,
I think that's really cool that it's through your friendship that you're like, wait a minute, this is explaining something that no one else would know or be able to describe. Like, this is so crazy. I can totally relate to that. So who gave you your very first reading? Did you ever have like a reading with someone that you remember?
I have to think. Like first official paid, I think, I believe the very first paid reading I did was with Empress Lannis, who's one of my closest friends on
Yay!
Twitter. I believe that was the first paid reading I got. I could be wrong.
What a
But
great
that was
person.
the first one I remember. And her and I are very, very good friends now. I love the work that she's doing with all of her art collages, astrology collages and everything. And
Astral Zoo. Go find
Astral
it
Zoo.
on
Yes.
Instagram. Yeah.
So good. And actually, as of this recording, I should be meeting up with her in a couple of weeks, which is super exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, did you get the her discount that happened recently?
No, I didn't. I took advantage of another one last year though.
I can't wait to get a reading from her. I'm just like,
She's
I,
so good.
yeah, it's definitely the next one I'm getting because it's long overdue. So, um,
Yeah.
that's cool. So, did you have someone when you first got into astrology that was your biggest influence? Kind of like a mentor or,
Yeah, I did have a spiritual mentor based out of India. She was well versed in tropical and Vedic astrology. And I was I she at the time she was going through her Saturn return, so we had a bond for a couple years, um, and just like we're helping each other through our different connections and stories. And she taught me a lot about tarot and astrology. Sadly, that connection kind of died out as she got married and then moved on with like the rest of her life. But I have a lot of gratitude towards her for bringing me into like the astrology space and for being that first spiritual mentor.
That's awesome. Yeah, I find that our very first influences kind of are just there to do that for us, and they don't always have to like continue in our lives, but they're just there to kind of like push us along and then move on, and that's kind of cool. So, what astrological feature, I kind of already mentioned it, of your birth chart do you identify with that most resonates with you as an astrologer? Like what in your chart explains, oh yeah, I do astrology.
I mean, yeah, the moon Neptune is pretty conjunction's pretty strong. Um, and that Neptune is also conjunct my MC,
Right.
as well as my Venus is conjunct my MC. And that Venus in Aquarius is my chart ruler as well. Um, so I think those are kind of the big things. That
Yeah,
kind
a love for divination and you know, someone that can connect with others through metaphysics and things like that.
yeah. And then also, yeah. And then also my sun and moon are both in ninth house Capricorn, eighth house sun in Placidus, but still there's ninth house influence there. I think that is also just a very big aspect, and a 12th house Saturn too.
Oh
So
yeah, that's a really cool one to have. And yeah, ninth house is divination, astrology, and you have both your luminaries there. So, I mean, there's a lot going on that points to you being in this field. So that
yeah,
makes a lot of
there's so
sense.
much.
Yeah,
There really is so much. And same with like somatic work because that's also a very spiritual process.
right.
So yeah, all of it really does fit in like the same vein, so to speak.
Right, especially with an emphasis on the moon, which is like can be like the vessel, the physical body, and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's our emotions. Yeah,
Mhm.
how we process them.
Overall, how do you think astrology has influenced your life? Do you kind of use it on a daily basis? How do you reference it day to day? Are you kind of like one of those people that, you know, has to reference it for everything?
The way that it really is impacting me is interpersonal relationships. Because as I said before, I really do see the parallel between psychology and astrology so clearly. And one of the probably the greatest gift that astrology has given me is being able to understand people in a way that previous models I wasn't able to. Even though I've been studying psychology for quite some time, I really didn't see the full depth of it until I got into the somatic psychotherapy work in 2022. In astrology, as I said, I got involved deeply with in 2021. So that was really the first system where I got to go deep and see people in a way that I could understand them, not in this like very previously very socially awkward kind of energy where I just couldn't read people very well. I couldn't read myself very well. Astrology finally gave me that tool to be able to do that, and that's been the biggest game changer. So, um, even today, that's how I use it. So, um, like if my best, like I have two very, very close best friends. Like if one of them is going through something, I can look at their chart and be like, oh, this is what's happening. Or based on like the transit or who they're interacting with. Um, or if like a transit impacting me, I'm like, okay, so what's going on? I need to see. That's how I really see it. I'm not someone that like usually tracks bigger things like some people are like so heavily involved. Um, just because my brain capacity and energy doesn't really allow me to do that at this right now. But when I can, I try and catch stuff. Or if there's like a date that people are like astrologers are all circling. So for example, like when we're recording this, Uranus is entering Gemini in a couple of days, and like everyone's talking about it. Like that's an example where it's like, okay, I need to monitor this, um, and just like see what the impact's going to be for myself and for others.
Let's move into practice and technique. So, What is your style of astrology, like as far as house systems or like tropical, Vedic, etc.?
Oh, gotcha. So I'm fully in tropical astrology. I've wanted to study Vedic for a while, just have not had the time really. Um, for my readings, I kind of look it's funny, I kind of look at both Placidus and whole sign together at this point because even though my readings are predominantly in Placidus, I've learned from other astrologers just how helpful whole sign is. So, for example, in my own chart, I go from an eighth house sun and a seventh house Mercury in Placidus to a ninth house sun and eighth house Mercury in whole sign. So monitoring those changes have really taught me like, oh, okay, there's something that's really important with whole sign. And especially now as I get more involved in the professional space, I'm realizing more and more professional astrologers use whole sign. Um, but I don't think I could ever fully commit to that because Placidus is it's the main one that most people are looking at. Like you have an astrology app, it's showing your chart in Placidus, it's not showing in whole sign. And then the other thing is again that nuance, like that seventh house Mercury for me shows up so heavily and in all my interpersonal connections. And I don't think uh just the eighth house Mercury would explain the whole story for me. Predominantly Placidus is what I started with and what I'm probably going to use for the foreseeable future. But sometimes, when I do readings for like like professional astrologers, like, can you put this in whole sign, please? And I'm like, oop, sure, no problem. Thankfully,
Yeah,
it's
I've
easy.
done a lot of readings for people where they've never seen whole sign being used, and they're seeing it for the first time. So I have to kind of do a disclaimer at the beginning, like, "Hey, I'm going to show you your chart in whole sign, and you may have seen it differently in Placidus. This is, my this is how I do it." And you can get paradigm shifts that way. But I think, yeah, people are more commonly used to Placidus, and it can make them feel a little bit like, oh, like kind of like maybe not off put, but like, oh, this is kind of different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see the value in both for sure. Yeah, it's kind of great to use them both at the same time. So, how do you explain how the planets kind of affect our lives?
Um, so I guess when I think about talking about this, I think of like the different dimensions. So each planet has a different aspect to it. So like, very typical like sun identity, moon emotions, yada yada yada, right? Um, but then you add houses, that adds a component to it. Um, Decans is something that I'm currently studying, that adds a layer to it. Degrees add a layer to it. Like so it's a multi-layered kind of aspect to it. But I usually just stick to planets and houses. I like to say that the houses are like a 12-room apartment complex, and then the planets are like guests, and they all have their own different temperaments. And as they transit, as they make their transits, they're going to different apartments, more or less, like going in and out. And so that's how I really describe um, how the planets work. I think that's the analogy that has resonated most with people when they talk about it. And that's probably what I'll continue to use for a while.
What do you say to people who get into that kind of argument, maybe like skeptics that say, like, you know, how could a planet that's so far away like have any effect like physically on anyone's life, like, on a physical level?
So what I've learned to do, um, well, like first of all, like just an example, like the moon affects the tides. Like that's an easy like analogy you can show. And I guess you're like, oh, the moon's close. Um, But then also you can bring up like generations and Pluto, and it's an example of that. You can you can bring up like what people have gone through during the ages of their late 20s during their Saturn return as an example of that. But what I've really learned to do is just kind of like if like a friend, especially if like they're arguing it, like you just kind of walk with them and be patient, and then just wait for when the right time comes. So I have a very dear friend of mine who's a NASA scientist. She is was very, very anti-astrology for a while, which I understand, I respect it. Um, and then her Saturn return happened, and that was the big game changer for her. I believe the transit. I don't remember. Snakes are associated with Saturn, I know. And then I think it was basically her basement flooded and there were snakes in there. And
Whoa.
I think yeah, crazy, right? And I believe I don't remember if it was Moon conjunct Saturn or Moon square Saturn, but like that was enough for her. Like when I mentioned that and like how it just fit the astrology perfectly, she was like stunned, too stunned to speak. And that was enough for her to be like, okay, maybe there is some aspect to this that you need to respect. Um, so those are really like I look for the moments or examples to kind of explain. The other one, 19 and 23, those eighth house and 12th house years tend to really, really heavily impact people. I know for me, those were some pretty insane years. I actually founded Nova Luna during my 12th house perfection year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a TikTok series back during COVID times of all the perfection houses. And so I was like, hey, this is like deep in my TikTok, but I was like, hey, are you 23? Like, and I listed all the ages and I was like, this is all the themes that you might be dealing with. And everyone was like blown away because they were like, oh my God, I'm 23. This is exactly what I'm going through. It really resonated with people. So I like that answer because if there is a skeptic out there, they might not be ready to fully absorb things. They might not be meant to absorb things
hmm
that astrologers do. So people come around when it's the right time, and I like that you don't do like any type of like pushy, like people don't have to believe. And the reason I always go to for that is like you might have a really bad ninth house. Like your ninth house might be crap. So,
Fair.
you might be meant to never appreciate it. So
Hmm.
that's kind of what I always go to.
That's a good way of looking at it. I like that approach. Yeah, sometimes there are other aspects in the chart that people might not be to cater to astrology, as you said. That's something
Right.
that's something to keep in mind as well. I got to remember that. That's actually really good.
How often do you come across skeptics and have you ever been confronted by one and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, not as much because I'm not really on that side of Twitter where people are like skeptical of it. If I see it on Twitter, I usually just ignore unless I feel like called to like, okay, maybe there's something with this person I should reach out to.
Mhm.
Um, the skeptics that I see really, as I mentioned before, are friends of mine who are very deep in scientific practice, don't really see the value in astrology, but over time I've seen them grow in their spirituality bit by bit. I'm the kind of I'm that's kind of my role within a lot of these friendships to bring people into spirituality. And in turn they bring me into other aspects of myself. So it works out. And just watching them like grow, like a friend of mine who was like again another astrology skeptic. She just got her first tarot reading recently, and it really resonated with her, and she was just like shocked by it. And I was shocked that it hit so hard for her. So now we're just kind of waiting because I made a prediction for this month. So I'm just if it comes true, then that's someone who's going to be bought into tarot for life. Like those kinds of moments. That's how the universe and that's how I've seen the universe operate. So
Love that.
yeah.
I like that you allow the skeptics to kind of like teach you something as well, relationally with Venus. Like, uh, maybe there's something, maybe you feel called to say something, maybe not. And maybe like I'm here to gain something from this interaction in a way.
Yeah, I think I've been forced to in order to in order to keep some of those friendships like strong. I've had to like shut my mouth a little bit at times and just let it ride out. That's just how it's been. So
For sure.
yeah.
So, what are you working on right now? I keep hearing about this lovely project that you're working on.
Yeah. So um I think I can mention like some of it publicly. I am working on an astrology podcast of my own. Um it'll come out hopefully this fall. I was hoping to get it out beginning of June, but family. Like, there's been a lot of stuff this fourth house reflection year, also with it being my Saturn return, also with it being my nodal reversal. Like there's so much going on. So I've had to really focus on that before starting this podcast, but I am so looking forward to it. I think it's going to take a look at people in a way that not that astrologers haven't done it before. Um, I have a good friend of mine, Sacred Mystic on socials. She does a reading where it's like she looks at us like your chart from like a creative standpoint and like matches you to different like musicians or films or whatever. Like super cool. I initially wanted to create a podcast to interview creative people, and then now I'm taking looking at that from an astrology lens, basically, and putting that together. Um, so it's super exciting. I'm just like there's so much I'm looking forward to it. Not only going into so many details, I can say Sacred Mystic's actually gonna be a collaborator on the project. I can say that now too. I was kind of like trying to nudge. I'm like, no, it's just whatever. It came out. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be so cool. And I really do think for me, like I see all these like transits with my MC. I think that's going to be like part of what I'm known for in the astrology space is that podcast. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be special.
That is awesome. So, can you recommend some books, resources, or tools to other astrologers out there?
Yeah, I have the resource that I bring up the most is The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need. It's such a great beginner book. It's like language and like thoughts, like it's super like old school astrologer, like super strict in a lot of its views, but it really is a pretty solid encyclopedia for a lot of different astrology transits and signs and planets and all that. So for me, that's kind of the book that I recommend the most. Um, I don't know if there's any like other like really big astrology book that I recommend. I'm very much someone that consumes a lot of astrology media. So very heavy in like the astrology podcast, for example, um, like different people's social media posts and Substacks and all that. Like that's really the way that I learn. I think books are really helpful, but I am not that I don't read, but like I've been so heavily involved with like reading research projects and also like somatic books for my somatic program. And so that's really taken up a lot of my reading time. But social media is really where I've created a lot of this basis. And I've learned so much from other astrologers who have done a lot of reading. And so I have a lot of trust in them, and a lot of them like reference their sources and all that. Um, so that's really where the bulk of my information has kind of come from um, with astrology and other things. Also, a lot of it is past life for me, I imagine as well. I have my South Node in Pisces, so there's definitely been some layer to it.
It's
But
innate to you, yeah.
yeah.
I can relate to the like online, like social media aspect of learning. I think that's mostly how I learned at the beginning. A few books here and there, of course. I have a whole stack of books, but you can learn a lot when you find the right people online to learn from, as you said, who are learned themselves, and then they kind of distill that information to you, and you can kind of be like, oh, I need to read this or I need to reference this, and they can point you in the right direction. So when you curate your timeline properly, that's actually a very legit way to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially like people like so many astrologers are putting out like lectures or guidebooks on different things. Usually those aren't like super pricey either. And if you really want to learn about like a specific topic, like those are really good resources to have. I know like Kira Ryberg, for example, has a lot of different like guidebooks and lectures and all that. That's a really good resource that I've used for learning a couple different topics. So
I can
there's so many different things that people have though. Like if you just have to look and find and see. Yeah.
for sure. So, do you have advice to baby astrologers out there? Anything you would say to set them off in the right direction?
Mhm. Two things really come to mind. One, studying the basics really is important. Like knowing the planets inside and out, knowing the houses inside and out. Those are really key things to know early on. Um, and just like really like grounding yourself in those before like trying to jump into like zodiac releasing, for example, is like an extremely difficult topic. You want to go at a pace that's like not too crazy. And then the other thing, as speaking of pace, is just like not to be too hard on yourself when you're first learning. Um, you're gonna probably make mistakes, and that's okay. Like there's information that you're not gonna know or remember, or a lot of times like you'll come back to a chart a couple of years later with new information and see it in a totally different light. So there's no there's no like worrying about like, oh, I'm gonna mess this up. Like, and even early on, like you're gonna get nervous during doing readings for people, and that's okay as well. Like, I've been to a couple of astrologers where like starting out, like you could tell they were a lot more nervous, and then just the level of confidence they had when I went back to them a couple of years later, like it's night and day. So even within myself, like the amount of growth I've had in the last 5 years of reading charts, like it's pretty wild to think about all that.
For sure. I remember when I first started learning, like 2018, I wanted to start reading for people like right away, but I was nervous and you just kind of, you, you do just like with anything with practice, you get more comfortable and um, you have to trust yourself. So I really like that advice.
Yeah, yeah. One last thing that just came to mind. Something that was really helpful to me was I practiced with doing free mini readings for like family and friends. Those are really helpful. And not giving like fully in-depth readings because there is a certain level of depth where it's like, yeah, it should be paid, right? But just to practice with those people has been huge. For my own understanding of all these different spiritual mediums that I work with.
That's great advice. I think that's something that I hear most often from astrologers when I get asked them this question. They're like, "Yeah, just start with free stuff because it takes the pressure off of you,
Hmm.
and it leaves it open to you learning from that reading specifically. And yeah, it helps you gain that confidence without feeling like, oh, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe, maybe my work wasn't worth whatever, however much you charged. So that's a really the best advice, I think. So yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
Let's move into philosophy and ethics. So some very basic things you have to contend with when you first get into astrology is predetermination. So, do you believe in predetermination? And what's your view on free will?
Man, this is a topic I've been really heavily thinking about. This is a very like Saturn return kind of topic in a way. The way that I describe fate is very much like a choose your own adventure book where there are a lot of different paths to get to the same place, and there are certain people and events that will happen no matter what timeline you're on. Um, the way which makes sense when you look at astrology because your astrology can manifest in a lot of different ways, but your chart is still your chart. And so you can't totally go off from your chart because it's going to manifest somehow. Um, it's just it might look different depending on what path you choose. That's the way that I kind of look at fate.
Do you believe in reincarnation? And how does that like karmic past life stuff sort of fit into that?
Yeah, no, 100% like past lives are 100% a thing. Like I don't think there's any doubt about that. You look at all different reasons as to why. Um, I just know that that's true 100%. Um, I don't have like a formal theory about it. I think like the Hindu belief in like nirvana is the closest that I can think of, where it's like you're working all these different lifetimes until you clear your karma out in a way. I think that's probably the closest to what I believe in. Um, and then from an astrology standpoint, I think there are certain parts of your, I think your chart really, there is karma that can play into it, but not in the way that like it's super clear until you look at the psychology, which I think, again, the psychology really does play a huge role in astrology. So for example, as a Capricorn moon, I've learned that a lot of Capricorn moons, like they hold in their emotions, and so they don't, they, a big part of like their life is learning how to like not hold on to them and release them in a healthy way. Um, and you could see that as like if someone came in with a chart and was like, okay, I'm going to be a Capricorn moon to work on this aspect, like something along those lines. Um, because there, I don't know if we, some people, if we choose our charts, some people think we're given them. I don't really know the answer to that. Could be like a mix of both, but I do believe truly like there is some aspect to that. Um, like for example, why would I, my chart being all Capricorn and Aquarius, like I don't think that's something I would actively choose, right?
Right.
Um, or maybe I would, who knows?
But
Maybe my
those are
soul.
the karmic signs ruled by Saturn. So
Mhm.
perhaps, those that kind of element plays into it.
Mhm.
We there are some things we can choose, maybe some things we can't choose.
Right. This lifetime really has been a lot about clearing karma. It's been such a huge theme because of all that Capricorn Aquarius. So I could have chosen that, like that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, because I have played with the theory of like, do we choose our chart or not? And the question always comes up like, why the hell would I choose that? Um, and some people have really good answers for that. But yeah, I mean, it is a very delicate conversation because some people may not be ready for that conversation and it's very triggering, right? So, yeah, I think, you know, between fate and fortune, there's a delicate balance between those two. How can some astrologers misuse or abuse the practice? And have you ever seen this happen?
I mean, like one of the common things you'll talk about is like don't have a bias when it comes to placements. Everyone's gonna have like their own inherent bias to an extent. Um, Bias is as Sam Reynolds said this recently, bias is not something that you can totally erase.
I saw that.
Like, I think it's very, very true. But I think you want to try and be as objective as you can, like trying to take personal bias out of it. Something that we talk about within coaching, both coaching and somatic psychotherapy, is to just not have judgment. Like leave your judgment at the door when it comes to doing like services. And like, astrology is definitely something that needs to happen with that as well. But again, you are going to have some inherent biases. Like that is a normal thing that will happen. You just got to monitor yourself for those.
Right. I think it's important to remember that every single person has all zodiac signs in their chart. So when you reject a certain sign, for example, you are rejecting that part of yourself. And
Yes.
to recognize that first and foremost is very important so that we're not, shitting on certain people and making broad statements that aren't really fair just because that one time when that Gemini did something, whatever,
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
you. So yeah, for sure.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very important, especially when I do synastry readings, I also have to monitor myself for that as well. Because there are certain signs that I don't think pair super well, like sun signs that pair super well, but there are so many layers to synastry, like there's so many different aspects. So you can have every chart's gonna have with synastry, you're gonna have a few bad aspects. Like it's unavoidable. Um, and I was actually someone asked me about this on Twitter recently. I think actually Atlanta. She asked if like you would ever turn down a date because of a birth chart, and my response to it was there are very 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 few instances where I would because there's oh unless it's like truly terrible and you'll know when it's truly terrible. It's very rare that it is. Um, I can count on one hand how many times I've seen that come up for people. Um, then there's going to be there's going to be some positive aspects that can help mitigate some of that negative. So the important thing is to just focus on the whole rather than just like if you're pinpointing one specific thing and your bias is all leaning on that, that's not being a very objective astrologer.
Right. Stick to like experiential. So like, let's say you go on a date and you felt off, maybe then it might be helpful to look at the synastry and be like, why did I feel like that? But to just kind of like do that first and then sort of like manifest a bad experience, that I think also can happen too. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, be careful. For you, definitely be careful. Like I said, very, very, very rare that I've ever told people this is someone you should not go out with as like a recommendation. There are times where I've been like kind of iffy on it. Like I felt like this probably isn't someone that you're gonna end up with long term. And then there are times where I've said that and I've been wrong. So,
yeah, and you can be surprised. Like,
mhm.
sun signs, for example, that don't really seem compatible, something about it, like maybe you never thought about it, like, oh wow, that actually does make sense. And everyone's so different, you never know how those expressions can come together. So yeah,
Yeah.
keep an open mind for sure.
Yeah. Like just to give a quick example to that, my parents have their signs square each other, and then both of my grandparents either have their sun signs square each other or opposite by sign. I don't know if they're like by aspect. So, and all of those marriages lasted or have been lasting like 30 years plus. So, you know, it,
Right.
it, that's why it's just like if you look at one particular thing, it's not going to have the full story. My parents have Moon conjunct rising, which is one of the best aspects in synastry overall, and that immediately mitigates some of that sun.
I totally know what you're talking about because my family synastry I've looked at, it's all about the suns squaring each other and it's all about the luminaries on the rising. Like that
Oh
can
wow. Yeah.
happen with siblings, or I mean that's just a sign of like really good like synastry. So that's really cool. The family astrology is something, if you're a skeptic, you can look at that and be like, whoa. And that goes back to you
Yeah.
going back to your friends, the relational aspect of it, convincing you, yeah, you can do that for your family. And that's going to be one of the most reliable ways to kind of like get a great example of how astrology works. So, very good point.
Yeah, definitely. I was looking at my composite chart with my parents recently because Kiara brought up that, and I was just like blown away by how much synastry I had, like so many trines and conjunctions. Like, whoa, this is crazy. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
100%.
insane. I still need to make a video about my family's industry because it's like to the degree and stuff like that. It's just I can't even. It's
I can imagine. I can
It's
imagine.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, what is the biggest misconception about astrology that you notice?
I mean, the most popular one is people dismissing it because they're not their sun sign.
Right.
That's obvious. That's the most obvious one I can think of because every planet has it's a different sign in each one, and they're all working with each other in different ways within your own chart, with other people's charts. That is by far the most common misconception that I can think of.
Right. You're like, you're a Taurus. And they're like, but I don't really feel like a Taurus. And then you look at their chart and they're like, Gemini rising or something. And you're like, well, that might,
Yeah.
or your moon
My one of
sign.
my best friends is a Cancer Sun Libra Moon, but they're square. So she doesn't feel like a Cancer. She really feels that Libra because that Libra Moon's also a chart ruler. So
Right.
she
Yeah,
really, yeah, she feels the Libra much heavier than the Cancer.
exactly.
Yeah.
What would you say to religious people who condemn astrology?
This is a fun topic. I what people say about like, the especially with like Christianity, like the three wise men were astrologers as well as astronomers, because back then astrology and astronomy were one and the same. They weren't like separated. Um, that's the first thing that I think about. There's I'm trying to think what else you could bring. I've mentioned a lot of the things that I bring. They're not really about astrology. They're about like divination and different things. So like like Christian priests know to perform exorcisms, for example. Body and blood of Christ is a ritual,
Right.
right? And that's coming from someone who grew up like pretty heavily Catholic.
Mhm.
So I'm not like I'm speaking from experience with that. So those are really the arguments that I have is more of that kind of stuff, not really so much of astrology.
I think it's a good point to highlight that, religion in and of itself has rituals. They do use divination as much as you
Yes.
realize it or not. And I think I also, don't think religion and astrology are, as the whole point is like they are closer than you realize. They're not at odds. Um, I've actually grown closer to God through astrology, which
Hmm.
was not expected at all. Um, I wasn't raised with any religion, and the more I became intimate with astrology, the more I was like, oh, like there's something going on here, like and now I pray all the time, and so yeah, they can be friends, they can coexist, and they do. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, for me, I identify like my own religion's a little weird. It's like Christian pagan and like together in that way. Some people debate that like the Christian God is like just a deity. It's not like the omniscient present. Um, but that's neither here nor there. Because I really
right,
don't have like a firm stance on it. Yeah, I have a lot of self-discovery with that. But like just like that as an example, like that's divination, as you said. Like that's a God that you pray to. Um, the I've worked a lot with like the saints and archangels in the same way that I work with deities. Like
right.
those are things that people do and pray for and pray to in the same way that the Greeks used to pray to Athena or any other deity. Um, it's the same process or similar, not necessarily the same, but it's a similar process.
Right. I learned about the archangels through working for a crystal shop,
Huh?
and they had, figurines, and I learned about Archangel Michael through like not religion. So,
Yeah.
and very prominent astrologers that I've worked with in the past, they have archangels like, that they pray to and they have on their altars and things like that. So yeah, it's very much related. So
Absolutely. And the archangels are some of the strongest, at least from my experience, some of the strongest deities that are out there. So,
right,
yeah.
yeah, it's undeniable. So
Yeah.
all right, so moving into community and culture. So how do you feel when astrologers argue about techniques or different systems and being only one right way?
Okay. So, my very, very firm belief about different systems is that if there is an astrology take, it has to be valid in every single system. If it is not valid in every single system, there is something missing in somewhere.
I like
That
that.
is that is something that I feel very, very strongly about because it's something that should be true. If we're talking about a system that like is very strong, then it should be good everywhere, regardless of counterpoints, regardless of other systems. So that to me is my firm belief. I don't think there is one that's better than the other. They both, as we are talking about like Placid and whole sign, they both have their uses. Same with Vedic and tropical. I think it's just not it for people to be like this system's superior, that other system sucks. I'm like, no, no, not at all. I think every system is valid. It's just a matter of like how those things show up. Because one thing might show up in a system that shows up in a different way, but it doesn't mean either one is like invalid.
I agree with that. I like that. I've often attributed the different systems to camera lenses, so like and or translations of a piece of literature.
Oh, yeah,
Like
sure.
we're all reading the same thing, whether you read it in Spanish or English or Greek or whatever. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter how you say it. Like as long as you're translating it properly, we're all reading the same thing, right? So
Yeah.
we're taking a photo of uh, something. If I put a fisheye lens, you know, then it might look a little different, but it's still the same thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like that. Another way to say that is like if you're, as you said, if it doesn't translate in every single way that you're looking at it, then something's missing, right? I think that's a really good way to determine validity, because it will all boil down to the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I love both of those analogies of like the different camera lenses and the languages. I think the languages, especially, like there are words in some languages that don't exist in others.
right.
Like there are words in English that don't exist in like Chinese, for example. Like there, so in that sense, you could really think about like the different astrology systems. Maybe there isn't a word for something or another, right? So I think that's a really good way of looking at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it becomes silly when we argue, and it seems to be one of the most popular ways to get engagement online, but just keep that in mind. And uh,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you're young on, like Astro Twitter or whatever, like how it's like, okay, this person's fresh, but it's okay. You gotta
Yeah,
learn.
and it happens
Yeah.
every like Mercury retrograde, like
Yes.
without you see it and you're like, okay,
Like
what's going
clockwork.
on? All right, it's a transit, cool. We're gonna just move on. Now, it's interesting because I'm learning to become more outspoken in my own in views with that, and I'm actually doing that, well, starting to want to do that with Substack as well. Start like when people bring out Twitter arguments, I'm like, oh, that's a good Substack article.
Right.
So I have my tally, which isn't, I don't know how healthy that is, but like that's how it's been.
No,
So
I feel like I did that a lot in the past. So that's how you get like, oh, this is what people are interested in right now, and they want to hear, like, let me just
yeah.
give my little 2 cents on my little, page, whoever wants to read it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So do you recommend people get readings from multiple astrologers, or do you feel like once you find someone
Mhm.
that you like, you should stick to them only?
Um, my answer is a bit of both. Um, I think like I have definitely have my go-tos. For sure. There's two astrologers in particular that I've worked with repeatedly, because I trust them in like the work that they do, and they've given me some really good advice to look like things to look at. But I also think it's important to keep those things fresh. So I really like going to all different people. Um, there's actually only been three astrologers that I've gotten like done multiple paid readings from, because I think it really is important just like to get different viewpoints. It's the same kind of thing as we were talking about before. Like everyone has their own biases, right? So if you're just like have like one person, you're gonna get just their biases. Um, so I feel like it is important to look at like others as well. But I mean, having go-tos is also just really nice that I can just hit up one of my favorite astrologers and be like, hey, I need help with electing this, or I need advice on this connection. What do you think? That's actually really, really helpful to have that. And I am grateful for those connections, especially because those ones are just like they keep me steady, and then also have like kept me in the astrology community when things have gotten tumultuous.
Mm, hmm. Yeah, there's benefits to both. What do you think happens when we die?
I really the theory of like all of your memories like flooding past before you, I think is something that is there. A lot of times like when people are like passing away and like they get like, but this is my own personal belief, like when they get maybe like schizophrenic, or like they're very you can feel them moving on into the void. They're connecting with like spirits and like ancestors. um and so there is like a transition process that happens with that. So I think it's a mix of like those kinds of things, like it's like you're being called back into the spiritual realm, and then one day your soul leaves your body, and that's it. Um, and then I don't know what happens after that. I feel like there is some kind of judgment that happens, and that affects like your next lifetime. Um, until probably again, as I said, I think just like when all your karma is cleared out, I don't know what happens. I think that's the question that I'm most curious about.
I think there is something to the life review part of it because if that happens, right? And I do believe that that happens. We get a burst of DMT as we're dying, and we see everything, right? Our brain goes crazy, and if you were to if you were to witness everything that happened to you all at once, things in hindsight have meaning, which is part of why I love to do hindsight astrology the most, as
Mm.
opposed to like predictive astrology. But you get the full meaning of something at the very end of it, right? Because if you're in the middle of it, it means one thing, and because you haven't experienced what comes next. But once you finally see everything come to a conclusion, then maybe you are the ultimate judge of that in the end, and you can be that person to judge that for yourself, like, wow, I really fucked it, like I really should have maybe done this, or you know it could also be, you go to an external deity that helps you come to that conclusion. I've heard of a waiting room type scenario where you kind of like, or like, Toth and, that whole Egyptian process. But yeah, I think the life review part really ties into how our futures um, play into it. And when we come back and reassemble our chart and get spit out again. Um,
1,000%. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I experienced that even in the present. Like I'm in like a constant life review with the deities that I work with as part of being Saturnian, I guess. So I'm always in conversation with them about that. And karma is such a big part of my life in this lifetime, so it's something I
Right.
experience all the time. And then I know from past life readings that I've gotten like how negative karma from a previous life effect has affected this one. And I feel like that's so I know there's some layer of like you messing up in a previous life really does impact your current one. Like there really are layers to all of it. And then you talk about like ancestral karma too, and then clearing that out as well is something that I've been in discussions with people a lot with lately. So there's so many layers to it. There's so many layers to it.
Lastly, how do you feel about the future of astrology, and what would you like to see how it is used in society, or how people feel about it overall?
Yeah. Um, I'm excited for the future of astrology. I'm seeing all these different projects, creative projects that people have been doing, all these different astrologers. I'm like, this is so cool. I'm very, very much looking forward to that. I know in-person conferences are like coming back full swing. Like Norwalk's been going on for a while, but UAC is coming back. I know.
I hope to be there.
Um, yes, plan to be there as well. Um, so there's a lot of exciting things going on. And astrology is also becoming more and more mainstream, which I personally am excited about. I know a big part of my purpose here in this lifetime is to bring us like spirituality to people and all these different aspects, like astrology, tarot, especially somatic work, because that is something that humankind needs more than anything else, in my opinion.
Yep.
Um, like so what I'd like to see is just more people like getting involved with it, and the more people I know, like some astrologers are like astrology should be gate capped, so and so because it can be used in harmful ways. But I'm in the camp of just wanting to see more and more people get involved and really get in touch with that spiritual side, because that is something that's extremely important for pushing. humanity forward, I think. Um, and again, especially somatic work, just because that completely changes your life when you're doing it, as I've seen. Like I was not I wasn't expecting to be an astrologer either, but I really was not expecting to have like somatic psychotherapy as one of my offerings. Like that couldn't no idea that was going to happen. So I really just am so much looking forward to people connecting with like their souls and their bodies in brand new ways. And over the course of really Pluto and Aquarius and I guess Pisces after. Yeah, and taking breaks from astrology is so important too. Like I didn't really most of the readings that I did in 2024 was more like tarot. I really focused on learning that system a little bit better, and then I really didn't focus on astrology all that much in particular. Um, that was something that was actually really good at just like take a step back from astrology because again, I was getting like too overwhelmed with it, like too deep into it. I'm like, I need to like figure out other things right now and focus on other things. So
Exactly. I hear a lot of astrologers say that taking a break is the best.
oh, it's needed. It is
Oh, yeah.
so needed. And I part of why that's part of why I love having all these different services because each day it's a little bit different. I don't have to like hyper focus on studying one or getting so deep into one and then that's all I can think about and do. It's like that's not helpful to me personally to have that.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that was my last question.
Mhm.
So thank you again for being here and answering all those questions. Go look at Nova's website, NovaLunaReadings.com. Their link tree has all of the socials on there: Substack, Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, and look out for the podcast that's coming out soon. What is the? Can you give away your YouTube yet?
I know the Lunar readings. I'm on YouTube as
Okay.
well. But I know I'm keeping the podcast name under wraps for now.
Good idea.
I want to keep the election very like
Mum. Yeah,
mum because
smart, smart.
I need a good I want to really nail that election like pretty hard. I mean, it's a big project. So
That's awesome. I'm really excited for you. I can't wait. It sounds like a really fun project, and I will make sure I'm subscribed. But yeah, thank you again for joining me today, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of AstroCulture.
yes,
Bye.
thanks for having me on, Sophia. This was a lot of fun.